right, guys, here we are in the upper left. We have our red Terran player from the team World Elite. It is Loner. And down in the bottom right in the green, ooh, he's even my favorite color. I like that. From the team Invictus Gaming, we have Xigua, which actually means watermelon in Chinese.
Interesting.
Yep, that's right.
Sure you weren't being trolled?
No, it actually does, because his one of his other IDs is actually watermelon.
Yeah.
Oh,
cool.
Is. Yep, I actually found that out last year when I was casting some of the qualifiers for the GSO World Championships, and he was playing against Sen actually, and Sen of course won that, ended up at the World Championships, but in some of the games his ID said watermelon, so I was like, why is that? And people were like, oh, it's because Xigua means watermelon in Chinese, yeah.
All right, so we are once again on a map where we have enormous Morse TV logo, so I feel right back at home now. And this is a pretty early scout from Xigua. Just wants to make sure he gets a good read on his opponent, but really getting that up there pretty quickly, as I imagine he's going to opt for some sort of a 15 hatch or something along those lines.
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, I'd be shocked if he didn't do a 15 hatch. It's like the standard in terms of very, very early game openings in Zerg versus Terran. Now, talking a little bit about Loner. He is on World Elite, and if you guys remember back when the Prime players used to be like Marine King Prime .we, the .we part was World Elite. They had a partnership with this team. Loner, I believe, did actually live in the Prime house for a little while in Korea, practice with the team, play in the GSL. He is back in China now, but still a player that a lot of Koreans, do respect and have heard of. Xigua, on the other hand, was actually a pro Warcraft 3 player. He played Orc. Warcraft 3 did very well for that, switched over to StarCraft 2, and actually won G.League Seasons 1 and 3 in China. The G.League is a pretty big StarCraft 2 tournament series in the Chinese community, so both of these guys arguably the best in China, and this semifinal is certainly going to do a lot in terms of convincing the fans out there who really is going to be the best.
And I'm interested to see what the Chinese server approach is to early game TVZ at the moment.
Yeah, same here.
Looks like Loner deciding to go with the one Rax gasless fast expand. That's real no surprise, but the question is, what is he going to do afterwards? Is he going to go straight up into, or like just put out like 2 reactor Hellions and then go into Banshees right afterwards with a 3rd command center? Is he going to opt for that mech transition we've been seeing so much of lately? A lot of questions now, but we'll see how Loner reacts to that pretty soon.
Yeah, I like that he's going to be building the supply depot wall at his ramp at his main. He's going to be moving the barracks back, doing whatever sort of adding on he's going to do, any sort of teching out of vision of his opponent. He's going to make his opponent have to send an overlord into the base if he wants to see what's going on. So any little thing you can do to restrict information like that, I always think is very, very cool. But yeah, we've been talking a lot about Terran versus Zerg lately. We've been seeing more and more Terran players, and I think we're going to see even more going Banshee into mech in TVZ, which I think is a great answer to that. But we still see a large amount of Terrans sticking with the good old Marine tank style. The problem with that being that you really can't do as much damage in the early game as you used to be able to, now that Queens have that range upgrade and other people are going for the 4-Queen build. It's a little bit different.
And we'll see what Xigua ends up going with here in just a bit. Looks like it is going to be, I was just about to say, it is going to be a 4-Queen build. That's going to allow him a lot of flexibility to continue to spread creep very early on in the game. We've seen players that are able to outright deny 4th bases and things like that by the 13 or 14 minute mark just through sheer creep spread. Also keeps you very safe against those early game Hellions. So very cool stuff out of Xigua. We'll see how he transitions out of it.
Yeah, so Xigua, a lot of times with this type of opening, you can have the option of taking a quick 3rd base, so I wouldn't be surprised at all. Actually, there it goes, 3rd base going down for Xigua. Again, the Queens just keep you so safe. A lot of Zerg players will skip, making Zerglings almost completely, only making just a couple. Loner, on the other hand, doing something we see very commonly in TVZ these days as well, responding to that fact that you can't do a lot of damage early on by going for a very fast 3rd command center. So this is really, very new school Zerg versus Terran that we're seeing here from both players.
And 3 gas after this for Xigua, so we'll see what sort of upgrades he prioritizes here in just a bit. It's going to be a 5th Queen as well, added on pretty quickly. Start to send that over towards the towards the 3rd hatchery. So, in some cases we've seen even players in the GSL going up to 6 Queens. 6-Queen build has been pretty popular, so this is pretty cool stuff out of Xigua.
Dude, double engineering bay actually for Loner. I love that. I think that's so cool. I mean, again, just a great way to take advantage of the fact that your opponent's not going to be aggressive early on.
Thought it was very interesting there. 2 queens just decided to haze another queen by shooting it a couple of times. But
why not? You know, you gotta, if you want to be part of the queen club, you have to go through initiation.
I guess so, man.
Like,
that's harsh.
You have to take a couple hits from the new range attack.
Well, let's see here now what Loner will do. Go ahead and move out from here. Double engineering, we pointed out, 1/1 upgrades are already on the way. This has been pretty common out of players recently, just super, super greedy builds. I mean, as players are just essentially trying to out-greed each other. We've kind of used that phrase a couple of times. Pretty good splitting by Xigua, as he initially had a couple of his drones out of there and out of range. It looks like the Hellions are going to try and get in and do a little bit more damage, but being surrounded, they did end up killing 5 workers, though. 6, actually, right there at the end.
Yeah, you know, I feel like Xigua could have actually controlled those queens just a little bit better. I mean, normally you don't see Zerg players letting Hellions in like that, letting them do damage, but I just can't stop talking about what Loner is doing here. He's getting tanks in siege mode, like, immediately, like, right away, not planning on doing any sort of early aggression at all, and this, I think, represents the other style that we're going to see Terran players start to employ quite a bit, which is just kind of throwing all those early game harassments just pretty much out the window. You know, aside from just a Hellion or 2, you're just going to go for siege tanks, Marines right away, get your upgrades, and just be like, all right, I'm just going to immediately start working on the army I want to be using for the rest of the game. So this and mech, I think, are the 2 things we're going to see quite a bit in Terran versus Zerg here in the next couple months, and getting that armory as well. So yeah, just really, really fast upgrades for our Terran player. That's
right. 4th gas on the way now as well. So he wants to saturate 2 bases of economy very, very quickly. 71 workers at the 9.5-minute mark for Xigua. That is pretty spectacular.
Oh, yeah.
And so, but his opponent certainly no slouch, getting those triple SCVs as quickly as possible. And we'll see what Loner wants to move into afterwards. Double Tech Labs hitting for him on those barracks, so he will be able to produce a fair number of upgrades there as well. And just a ridiculously greedy build, like I mentioned, out of both players. But once they get their infrastructure in place, they are going to be able to just macro like mad.
Yeah, Xigua appearing to go into a Mutiling Baneling out of this. He does prefer to play in that style. I was wondering if we're going to see him add on that Infestation Pit and play for the Ling Baneling into either Ultra or Broodlord instead, but looks like he's just kind of playing this kind of a new sort of sleek, smooth version of that old school composition. So I love what Xigua is doing right now. I'm actually going to totally study this replay a little bit later and pick out some of the more detail-oriented things from it too. But man, Terran players can really watch Loner as well. I mean, the fact is that neither one of them is being really aggressive at all. They're just kind of poking here and there, being like, all right, I just want to kind of keep an eye on what you're doing. Xigua now sending the most units we've seen go across the map for one player at the moment.
That's right, so kind of a 15-minute no-rush feel to this game, but that's okay. And looks like Loner's going to be able to pick up on these Zerglings pretty quickly and dispatch of them. Xigua, though, is going up to a 4th base, sitting on 6 gas for the time being, so just saving up for those mutas that are popping out, 10 of them all at the same time with 2 ground upgrades, melee upgrades specifically as in weapons, and air upgrades and centrifugal hooks as well.
You know, in StarCraft 2, we kind of see this sort of development cycle go through with the way that players approach different matchups, and how that kind of goes is initially you see, you know, remember what we saw in the early days of StarCraft 2, which was a lot of very early harassment, a lot of hurting your opponent early so that you could get that advantage from doing damage to them and then coming back and winning the game later. Then we saw, you know, one race in a matchup figuring out how to defend that, and because they could defend it, they would have a huge economic advantage, and for a while the other race responds by just saying, all right, well, I guess I'm just going to sit back and play more economically, you know, minded myself too, and then after that you find ways to harass your opponent through those defenses that they've set up, and then the cycle kind of starts all over again. So it's really interesting to kind of watch that cycle repeat itself in StarCraft 2, and right now we're definitely in a spot where Zergs have figured out a way, especially with that new Queen range buff, to defend really all the early Terran aggression. So Terran is kind of going to sit back and play a lot more economical for a while they develop ways to get in there and do damage anyway. So the circle of life.
Was pretty good missile turret coverage there for Loner, but he's going to need to restart that here in a second. A massive amount of banelings being morphed in now for Xigua, 41 of them as a matter of fact, with the 62 lings that he still currently has on the field. Now 46 banelings with an infestation pit coming up, so they'll have a lot of units here, but Loner's pretty well defended with a lot of siege tanks, pretty good marine spread as well. All of his upgrades have kicked in, and he's sitting on 1-2 at the moment.
Loner is about to be under furious assault by Ling Baneling And Mutalisk as well. This looks like effort versus flash all over again for the Pro League. Here he comes. Lots of Banelings coming through. Is it going to be enough?
Actually took a big hit on his Marines as well, so he doesn't have a ton of anti-air to deal with the remainder of the Mutalisks that are left, and it's going to have to be done with largely missile turrets more than anything else. A few Marines now finally running in, had already used up a stim, and unfortunately getting splash damage by their own siege tanks. So despite the fact that the siege tanks have racked up quite a bit, these Mutalisks are going to be able to run over quite a bit that's left. Oh, but sweet Collector Edition Thor pops out just in time.
That is the coolest thing ever, man. That Special Edition Thor. He can't save those tanks, but he can sure look cool while he shoots at those Mutalisks.
His Javelin missiles with 1 billion range and don't do too much single target DPS, but they do work very well against clump units.
Look at those units, man. When you're on 4 bases as Zerg, you can just be Zerg. You can be like, all right, I'm just going to keep hammering Terran until they're dead. And I feel like he did enough damage with that initial attack to warrant continuing to go this way. And here he comes again, not even needing to go through the supply depots, not using the Banelings on the Thor intelligently enough, using them instead on the Bio. Oh, and on those poor SCVs.
Oh, economic damage being done. And how many workers killed is that? 2930, continuing to increase as well. These SCVs are kind of a goner there, unfortunately. So 2 more Thors have popped out, but not a lot of AoE on the ground, unfortunately, to deal with the continued Banelings and Zerglings that keep flooding in.
Yep, that's right. And man, speaking of flooding in, even more on the way now. The Thor's like, I want to do something useful.
Well, let's see here now as just pure Zerglings, not even worrying about Banelings anymore. There's not too much of splash damage. As it stands, the siege tank is going to fall before sieging up, and a couple of these Thors looks like they are going to be enough to clean up the remainder of the forces.
Well, here's the question, did Xigua do enough damage with those pushes to warrant, going Ultralisks? He gave himself time to get those upgrades and things like that, but I don't know. I mean, I feel like Loner still has a chance here. What's the larva count right now for our Zerg player? Not a lot of larva. Does have a pretty big bank built because of those 4 bases rather, mining. Is taking a 5th as well, but I think the time has come, and Xigua is kind of showing it right here, that you just kind of need to sit back, be a little bit more passive, build up that big army, and then go try to possibly end the game.
Now, the only thing I've been unhappy with is kind of his creep spread throughout this game. Yeah, it looks like he has 1 million tumors right now, but we're 18 minutes in, and had he been diligent, he actually had 15 active creep tumors at one point. The little drop down here at the bottom left, it is going to get cleaned up pretty quickly, but looks like this is going to try and make its way over to the main, but it should get stopped very, very early on. Yeah,
yes,
like this
it will.
Infest are going to shut that down. So, but I mean, the creep thread could be easily all the way across the map.
The Medevac not quite getting fungal to death, but kind of between a rock and a spiky, slimy place right now. Not really able to do any damage.
And it looks like that queen is going to fall, and most of those active creep tumors are going to be destroyed. So, Scan kind of hitting the jackpot there, as Loner going to be able to pick off a lot of those creep tumors.
All right, the Ultraling Zergling Baneling army is ready.
That's right, going to start rolling out as well. What's sitting here on the high ground?
Oh, nothing. Away.
Loner's actually moving back, and that's not going to give him enough time to siege up, unfortunately. And a forward infester catches so many units, and that allows everything to catch up and just obliterate what Loner had on the field.
Yep, that's right. The Banelings coming in. Loner just not able to split accurately enough, it looks like. Tank sieging up, trying to get a nice shot on those Banelings, but it's not going to, again, be enough to take this out. Ultralisks just kind of doing whatever they want at this point.
And Fungal Growth's pinning down the last couple of units. Ultralisk cleaning up most of the rest. And looks like Xigua still up by 60 supply, now up by a base as well. Well, actually 2 if this one actually can't get established.
Yeah. Zerg has a huge advantage this game. More units being rallied in, though. Xigua getting a little bit sloppy in this later part of the game. He needs to stay focused. I mean, you see a lot of Zerg players actually lose the game from this standpoint because they get lazy with their rally points, they get lazy with their engagements, and all of that is just something you really can't afford to do in an important best-of-5 situation like this.
That's right. So, as you mentioned before, Loner recovering pretty well, back up to 160 supply now, and Xigua just sitting back and waiting. He is maxed once again, but not attacking with the extra amount of lings that he actually had sitting around. So we'll see if that is going to be a mistake or not. Ultralis actually running in first, taking a little bit of damage. At the same time, we have a double drop going on as one attack is coming over on the right-hand side, down at the bottom left-hand corner. Loner actually going to be able to take out that base. He is taking some damage back at home, but Xigua is kind of running all of his forces into into a brick wall.
Yeah, you know, I feel like that sloppiness is really coming back to haunt Xigua. There he goes, losing his 4th base. And suddenly things just don't seem quite as sure for our Zerg player.
That's right. We'll be able to clean up those lings here momentarily, even without much medevac support there. So as we see, 161's applied to 139 now. Things certainly a lot closer for Loner.
Yeah. Wasn't able to really ever hold that center part of the map, too. That's definitely also a problem. Whoa, that medevac did not live long.
Nope, unfortunately
nice transfuses, though.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Going to be able to clean up those Marines pretty easily. So taking a look now, Loner has not actually landed his 4th orbital command. There should be able to do so now, and there it goes.
Yep. For some reason, that stim sound is really kind of standing out in my ears.
Which is the Brood War stim sound. So
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, no, there's been like
really
the Zealots actually had the Brood War sound effect as well. I don't know if it's a map editor thing or if it's something with the Chinese client, but there's a lot of Brood War sounds that have been playing the entire matches we've done.
I was like, no, because I thought I was hallucinating with my ears, but no, those are some of the Brood War sounds. It's kind of a cool little throwback thing. Oh, fungal on a lot of those workers. They're not going to enjoy that.
No, not at all.
Or maybe they won't die.
Well,
might be okay.
Oh, no, a lot of them have died, actually. So
that's the stuff.
Yep. Well, the Ultralisks are taking quite a bit of damage themselves. Not a lot. Oh, there we go. Finally, a fungal growth pinning those down. I was about to say AoE missing from our Zerg players. No Banelings were in the mix, but Xigua getting a little bit farther ahead there, and he's going to lose another base.
Yeah, this is starting to look not so good for our Zerg player. I mean, he's running out of resources very quickly. Stayed on Ultralisks too long. Basically, this is a problem that a lot of Zergs used to have, but we don't really see that much anymore. There comes a point when you go for Ling Infestor Ultra where Ultralisks just don't work, you know, after your opponent adds on some Marauders like this. So when you're going for these Ultralisk pushes, you need to be putting down your Spire and then Greater Spire behind it so that when they have all these Marauders, you can suddenly hit them with Broodlords and then they just die, right? So Xigua kind of thinking he could end the game a little bit earlier than he could, and because of that, missing that crucial late game transition, and now because of it, is going to have a very hard time winning this game against Loner.
Well, we'll see now if he's able to get anything done, because unfortunately his economy is in shambles. I mean, he's gone through 3 bases pretty much altogether. This is really his only major mining base, and it's about to be dropped again. Yeah,
and not a lot of defense there as well. Loner sending out that lone medevac to do some damage.
Very appropriate there. But the Marines are forced to be picked up. The Zerglings are very powerful, fully upgraded with the oh, it looks like that Infestor did try to drop down a couple of Infested Terrans. Didn't really work out and was scanned and picked off. Or maybe just killed by the missile turret that got constructed right next to it.
That could be it. Yeah, it's a possibility. So Xigua, again, you know, staying on Ultras for quite a long time. I mean, this is one of those situations where players will look at it and be like, oh, Ultras are so bad. But Ultras aren't a unit that you're meant to, like, end the game with, right? It's a unit you're meant to kind of scare your opponent into going a very specific tech path and then going into Broodlords with in ZVT right now. So Xigua, you know, missing that Greater Spire, and because of that, he's just going to keep running units into his opponent and not really doing a lot of damage. Look at this.
That's right, and forced to commit a ton just to be able to pick up a drop. Oh, and it finally does get fungled, so it looks like it will get locked down if there's another fungal. And there's not!
No.
Yet another misplay from Xigua, unfortunately, and Loner's able to get out of there.
Yeah, well, things not going too well for a Zerg player right now. He's going to have to kind of, well, I don't know. I mean, it's going to be really tough to win at this point. His opponent a little bit behind on upgrades, but still he's got an army composition that is absolutely perfect at killing what his opponent has.
That's right, and it looks like he's going to start moving some units forward there. The drop hitting once again in the top right-hand corner that pulls all of the units out of position for Xigua, opens up this attack path for Loner to just run in and start killing bases.
Ah, yes. Here we go.
Ah, yeah. That's the stuff.
The stim sound.
Yep, that's right. So Loner now with absolute dominance over the middle of the map, and that's oh so important on Antiga Shipyard.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I hate to say it, but Xigua's kind of out of luck this game.
Yeah, I mean, Loner's pretty much going to roll the victory. Xigua's at a really huge advantage after his initial Zergling Baneling attacks at the beginning of the game, or towards the middle of the game, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, the first one was good. The second one was okay, and then it got progressively worse from that. And, you know, he's going to kill a couple of units here, but his Ultras are just going to die so fast.
That's right.
It's not really going to matter.
But he's forced to engage, unfortunately, and I think that's going to be all, folks. Loner has actually completed the comeback here. There's GG, and Xigua goes down in game number 1. Congratulations.